Next week at Shinnecock Hills, the most brutal examination in American golf gets underway. But before a single ball is struck, the chief of the USGA just made a statement about this year's tournament that every player in the field should take very seriously. Combined with a player revolt over rule changes, a battle with the governing body, and the biggest Grand Slam chase in a generation, this US Open is unlike anything the sport has staged in years. Here's the full story. Shinnecock Hills Golf Club in Southampton, New York, is not simply a golf course, it is an argument. Every time the US Open returns there, the same debate restarts about how difficult is difficult enough, about where the line between a legitimate championship test and outright cruelty actually sits. The club was founded in 1891 and hosted the second US Open in 1896. It has now hosted the championship 5 times across 3 different centuries, a distinction belonging to no other venue in American golf, and every single time, it has left a scar. The 2004 edition is the one nobody forgets. The USGA set the course so fast, so severely, that putting surfaces became almost unplayable late in the week. Players watched balls roll off greens without touching them. Chips from off the collar accelerated across putting surfaces and kept going. Phil Mickelson addressed a moving ball on the 13th green, took a 2-shot penalty, and walked off with a 10. Retief Goosen won the championship with a score of 4 over par. After the final round, the USGA issued a rare public apology, acknowledging the setup had gone beyond what was reasonable. It is the most significant admission of error in the organization's modern history. 14 years later, in 2018, Brooks Koepka returned to Shinnecock and made it his. He won his second consecutive US Open title with a score of 1 over par. The third round that year produced scoring averages above 75. Players described the course as unfair. Koepka described it as exactly the kind of test he was built for. The gap between those two descriptions is where this week's championship will be decided. This year, the 126th US Open runs June 18th through 21st. The course plays at approximately 7,434 yards, at a par of 70. Those numbers carry less information than they appear to. At Shinnecock, par is fiction. The real negotiation is between the golfer and the wind coming off the Atlantic, the fairways that narrow in the mind the closer you get to Thursday morning, and green complexes that Jeff Hall, the USGA's managing director of rules and open championships, has just addressed in detail. Hall's briefing ahead of the championship revealed what the USGA is aiming for with the course setup. Shinnecock in 2026 will be firm and fast, as it always is, but the governing body is acutely aware of the 2004 shadow hanging over any return to this property. The announcement from Hall made clear the USGA intends to test the players at the absolute limit of what is playable without crossing into the unplayable, a distinction that sounds simple and is anything but. The greens at Shinnecock, Hall confirmed, represent the greatest challenge on the property, which echoes exactly what Scottie Scheffler said after visiting the course for the first time in early June. Scheffler, having never played Shinnecock before, walked the fairways and came back with a specific diagnosis. He was a little surprised by the width of the fairways, but it was the green complexes that would decide the championship. That observation matters, because Scheffler is not a player who speaks for the sake of speaking. When the world number 1 identifies something as the decisive element on a golf course he has just seen for the first time, the rest of the field listens. His frustration with the governing bodies is already documented. At the 2025 PGA Championship at Quail Hollow, he called the no preferred lies ruling on a waterlogged fairway frustrating, pointing out that a mud ball on a perfect drive had turned a skills competition into a lottery. At the 2026 PGA Championship at Arana, he was among the players critical of pin placements that created a bunched leaderboard, where skill differentiation nearly disappeared. A man who has spent the last year publicly frustrated with how governing bodies set up their championship tests, is now walking into the hardest test those governing bodies produce, on a property that has a documented history of going too far. The collision between his principles and his ambition will be one of the defining storylines of the week. Rory McIlroy arrives in a completely different psychological space. He completed his own career Grand Slam at the 2025 Masters, finally ending an 11-year pursuit that had defined and at times consumed his career. He comes to Shinnecock as a 6-time major champion with nothing left to prove and a game he described as being in excellent shape heading into the summer. His one previous US Open title came at Congressional in 2011, where he demolished the field by 8 shots in one of the most dominant major performances of the modern era. His record since has been frustrating at this specific championship, but the freedom that comes from having no narrative left to chase may make him more dangerous than any statistics can measure. Wyndham Clark, who shot a Sunday 60 to win the Byron Nelson in May, arrives as perhaps the hottest player in the field on pure recent form. His US Open title in 2023 at Los Angeles Country Club showed he can handle this specific kind of examination, and the bounce back from his 2025 Oakmont meltdown and the subsequent Oakmont property ban has given him the kind of storyline that tends to fuel major performances. Quick pause. If you think the USGA will find the right balance between brutal and fair at Shinnecock this year, type "trust the setup" in the comments. If you think it will go the way of 2004 and turn into chaos by Saturday, type "here we go again." I read every single one. And here is where the US Open becomes politically loaded in a way it has never quite been before. The USGA is also the governing body that designed and mandated the golf ball rollback, the rule requiring professionals to use a shorter ball beginning in 2028. That rule has divided the locker room more completely than any change in recent memory. Justin Thomas called the USGA selfish and said the ball rollback was bad for the game. Bryson DeChambeau called it the most atrocious decision in the history of the sport. On the other side, Rory McIlroy publicly supported it, saying it put golf back on a path of sustainability. The players walking into Shinnecock this week are doing so in a state of open war with the institution hosting them. That psychological layer makes the 2026 US Open unlike almost any major in recent history. The course sits outside Southampton on Long Island, accessible by rail, shuttle, and if you are feeling extravagant, by helicopter. Mike Wan, the USGA CEO, has made a point of framing this year's championship as an opportunity to invest in the surrounding community, launching a golf access initiative across Suffolk County alongside the Metropolitan Golf Association. But the Community Goodwill program disappears the moment the first tee shot launches on Thursday. What remains is a golf course that has humbled every generation of professionals who have faced it. The previous winners at Shinnecock form their own collection of stories. James Foualis in 1896. Raymond Floyd in 1986, at age 43, the oldest US Open champion in history. Corey Pavin in 1995, scrambling and competing on a course built for ball strikers by refusing to behave like one. Retief Goosen winning despite the chaos of 2004. And Koepka in 2018, turning the savage setup into his personal advertisement for why he dominates major championships when the conditions get unfair. The name that will dominate conversation all 4 days is Scottie Scheffler. He arrives as the betting favorite, the world number one, the 5-time major champion who needs only the US Open to complete the career Grand Slam. He would become the 7th player in history to hold all 4 major titles, joining a group that includes Hogan, Player, Nicklaus, Tiger, and Rory McIlroy. And the final round of this championship falls on June the 21st, which is his 30th birthday. The symmetry is almost theatrical. Brooks Koepka, who won here in 2018, is playing his way back into form after returning from LIV Golf in January. Rory McIlroy, Grand Slam complete and unburdened, arrives as a legitimate contender with one previous US Open title at Congressional and a burning desire to show that his 2025 Masters victory was not the end of anything but a beginning. Wyndham Clark, who won his only major at Los Angeles Country Club in 2023, will be looking to repeat the kind of form he showed at the Byron Nelson in May, where he closed with a 60 to beat the field by 3 shots. Jeff Hall's announcement sets the table. The USGA is promising a fair but genuinely savage test, green complexes that will reward the most precise approach play in the sport, and fairways that look generous on the scorecard and punishing in reality when the wind moves. The championship has been building toward this week for 8 years, since Koepka walked off 18 in 2018. Now the course is back, the players are ready, and the most controversial governing body in golf is setting up the most significant major of the year. Whatever happens between Thursday and Sunday, one thing is certain: Shinnecock Hills does not produce quiet weeks. It never has, and this year, with more at stake and more tension in the locker room than at any point in modern history, it is not about to start. One final subplot worth watching: Brooks Koepka returning to the scene of his greatest achievement. He won here in 2018. His ranking has plummeted since returning from LIV Golf in January, sitting outside the top 200 when the field was set. But ranking numbers mean nothing to a player who has repeatedly demonstrated that major championships operate on a separate logic from regular tour events. Koepka made a public declaration ahead of the tournament that he believes he is going to win. That kind of confidence from a player ranked 255th in the world would be laughable from anyone else. From the man who defended the US Open title on this specific course, it is something the rest of the field will choose to dismiss at their own risk. Jeff Hall has prepared the course, Mike Wan has set the framework. 60 years of Shinnecock history have loaded the stage. All that remains is the golf. If this built your excitement for the US Open, drop a like before you scroll away. It tells the algorithm to push this to other golf fans who want to follow the story. And subscribe, because the coverage of this week is just getting started.